of his favourite work. All equality of alliance must rest with Elizabeth. Elizabeth had the consciousness of being 29. She was fully satisfied of being still quite as handsome as ever, but she felt her approach to the years of danger, and would have rejoiced to be certain of being properly solicited by baronet blood within the next 12 months or 2. Then might she again take up the book of books with as much enjoyment as in her early youth, but now she liked it not. She had had a disappointment which that book must ever present the remembrance of. The heir presumptive, the very William Walter Elliot, Esquire, had disappointed her. She had, while a very young girl, as soon as she had known him to be the future baronet, meant to marry him, and her father had always meant that she should. Mr. Elliot had not been known to them as a boy, but soon after Lady Elliot's death, Sir Walter had sought the acquaintance. Elizabeth had found him extremely agreeable, and he was invited to Kellynch Hall. But he never came, and the next tidings were that he was married. He had purchased independence by uniting himself to a rich woman of inferior birth. Sir Walter had resented it, and all acquaintance between them had ceased. This was still, after an interval of several years, felt with anger by Elizabeth. Yet so miserably had Mr. Elliot conducted himself, that though she was at this present time wearing black ribbons for his wife, she could not admit him to be worth thinking of again. Such were Elizabeth Elliot's sentiments, such the agitations to vary the sameness and the nothingness of her scene of life. But now another occupation was beginning to be added to these. Her father was growing distressed for money. While Lady Elliot lived, there had been moderation and economy which had just kept him within his income, but with her had died all such right-mindedness, and from that period he had been constantly exceeding it. Sir Walter was dreadfully in debt. Elizabeth felt herself ill-used and unfortunate, as did her father, and neither of them were able to devise any means of lessening their expenses without compromising their dignity, or relinquishing their comforts in a way not to be borne. Their 2 confidential friends, Mr. Shepherd, who lived in the neighbouring market town, and Lady Russell, were called on to advise them. Mr. Shepherd, a civil, cautious lawyer, who would rather have the disagreeable prompted by anybody else, excused himself from offering the slightest hint. But Lady Russell was most anxiously zealous on the subject. She was, generally speaking, rational and consistent. But she had a value for rank and consequence, which blinded her a little to the faults of those who possessed them, and Sir Walter was, as being Sir Walter, in her apprehension entitled to a great deal of compassion and consideration under his present difficulties. They must retrench. But she was very anxious to have it done with the least possible pain to him and Elizabeth. She drew up plans of economy, and she did what nobody else thought of doing. She consulted Anne. Anne considered it as an act of indispensable duty to clear away the claims of creditors with all the expedition which the most comprehensive retrenchments could secure. How Anne's more rigid requisitions might have been taken is of little consequence. Lady Russell's had no success at all, could not be put up with, were not to be borne. What? Every comfort of life knocked off? No, he would sooner quit Kellynch Hall at once than remain in it on such disgraceful terms. Quit Kellynch Hall. The hint was immediately taken up by Mr. Shepherd, who was perfectly persuaded that Sir Walter could not materially alter his style of living in a house which had such an ancient dignity to support. Sir Walter would quit Kellynch Hall, and after very few days more of doubt and indecision, the great question of whither he should go was settled. There had been 3 alternatives: London, Bath, or another house in the country. All Anne's wishes had been for the latter. a small house in their neighbourhood, where they might still have Lady Russell's society, and still have the pleasure of sometimes seeing Kellynch, was the object of her ambition. But the usual fate of Anne attended her, in having something very opposite from her inclination fixed on. She disliked Bath, and Bath was to be her home. And Lady Russell felt obliged to oppose her dear Anne's wishes. She was fond of Bath, and disposed to think it must suit them all. Anne had been too little from home, too little seen. Her spirits were not high. A larger society would improve them. How quick come the reasons for approving what we like! Lady Russell had another excellent one at hand, for being extremely glad that Sir Walter and his family were to remove from the country. Elizabeth had been lately forming an intimacy which she wished to see interrupted. It was with a daughter of Mr. Shepherd, who had returned after an unprosperous marriage to her father's house with an additional burden of 2 children. Mrs. Clay was a clever young woman who understood the art of pleasing at least at Kellynch Hall. Mrs. Clay was, in Lady Russell's estimate, a very unequal, and in her character she believed a very dangerous companion, and a removal that would leave Mrs. Clay behind and bring a choice of more suitable intimates within Miss Elliot's reach was therefore an object of first-rate importance. The very first application for the tenancy of Kellynch Hall was from an Admiral Croft, with whom Mr. Shepherd shortly afterwards fell into company in attending the quarter sessions at Taunton. By the report which he hastened over to Kellynch to make, Admiral Croft was a native of Somersetshire, who, having acquired a very handsome fortune, was wishing to settle in his own country. Accidentally hearing of the possibility of Kellynch Hall being to let, and understanding Mr. Shepherd's connection with the owner, he had introduced himself to him in order to make particular inquiries. "And who is Admiral Croft?" was Sir Walter's cold, suspicious inquiry. Mr. Shepherd was eloquent on the subject, pointing out all the circumstances of the Admiral's family which made him peculiarly desirable as a tenant. He was a married man, and without children, the very state to be wished for. Mr. Shepherd had seen Mrs. Croft, too, and a very genteel, shrewd lady she seemed to be, continued he. And, moreover, Sir Walter, I found she was not quite unconnected in this country. She's sister to a gentleman who lived a few years back at Monkford. Bless me, what was his name? After waiting a moment, "You mean Mr. Wentworth, I suppose," said Anne. "Mr. Wentworth was the very man. He had the curacy of Monkford, you know, Sir Walter, some time back. You remember him, I'm sure." "Wentworth? Oh, the curate of Monkford. You misled me by the term gentleman. I thought you were speaking of some man of property. Mr. Wentworth was nobody, I remember, quite unconnected." As Mr. Shepherd perceived that this connection of the Crofts did them no service with Sir Walter, he mentioned it no more, returning with all his zeal to dwell on the circumstances more indisputably in their favour, their fortune, and the high idea they had formed of Kellynch Hall, making it appear as if they ranked nothing beyond the happiness of being the tenants of Sir Walter Elliot. It succeeded. Sir Walter was talked into authorising Mr. Shepherd to wait on Admiral Croft, who still remained at Taunton, and fix a day for the house being seen. No sooner had such an end been reached than Anne left the room to seek the comfort of cool air for her flushed cheeks, and as she walked along a favourite grove, she said with a gentle sigh, "A few months more, and he, perhaps, may be walking here." However suspicious appearances may be, he was not Mr. Wentworth, the former curate of Monkford, but a Captain Frederick Wentworth, his brother, who, being made commander in consequence of the action off San Domingo, and not immediately employed, had come into Somersetshire in the summer of 1806.